The first time Samantha Brooks realized she might have to sell something she could never get back. It wasn't her dignity, it was her future. And it happened in a hospital hallway that smelled like antiseptic and quiet despair. "Miss Brooks, we need to talk about your mother's treatment plan." The doctor's voice was calm, too calm. Samantha already knew what that meant. Doctors only used that tone when they were about to take something from you. Time, hope, options. She stood frozen outside the ICU, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the strap of her worn backpack, the one she'd been carrying between classes, shifts, and hospital visits for months. "I thought we already discussed this," she said, her voice thin, like it might snap if pushed any further. And the doctor exhaled slowly, not annoyed, not impatient, just tired. "Yes, but your mother's condition has worsened overnight. The infection is spreading faster than expected. If we don't escalate treatment immediately—" "How much?" Samantha cut in, because that was the only part that mattered now. There was a pause, the kind that stretched too long, too heavy. Then, 48,000 up front, possibly more depending on response. The words didn't hit her all at once. They settled in slowly, like something sinking beneath water. 48,000 up front. Samantha let out a small, broken laugh that didn't sound like it belonged to her. That's not possible," she said. Not dramatic, not loud, just a simple truth. "I've applied for assistance. I've filed emergency forms. I even spoke to financial aid yesterday." "I know," the doctor said gently. "And I'm sorry." Sorry. That word again. It had started to sound like a closing statement, a period at the end of hope. Samantha swallowed hard, her throat burning. "What happens if I can't pay?" she asked, even though she already knew. The doctor hesitated, and in that hesitation, she had her answer. "We would need to consider transferring her to a lower-cost facility," he said carefully. "One that can provide supportive care." Supportive care, not treatment, not saving, just waiting. Samantha shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. The word slipped out before she could stop it. I can't move her. She won't make it. You know that." The doctor didn't argue, because he did know. That was the worst part. Everyone knew, except the system didn't care. 48 hours, he said quietly. "That's all the time we can hold this level of care without payment." 48 hours. Samantha nodded, because what else was she supposed to do? Beg? Scream? Collapse right there in the hallway? Instead, she turned and walked away, because if she stayed 1 second longer, she might break in a way she couldn't come back from. The ICU room was dim, too quiet. Machines hummed softly, steady and indifferent, like they didn't understand the weight of what they were holding together. Samantha stepped inside slowly. Her mother looked smaller today, smaller than she had yesterday, like something inside her was quietly fading. "Hey, Mom," Samantha said, forcing a softness into her voice she didn't feel. No response, just the slow rise and fall of her chest. Samantha moved closer, sitting beside the bed, and she reached for her mother's hand. Cold. Too cold. "You always told me I'd figure things out," she whispered. "That I was the strong one." Her voice trembled. "I'm trying," she added quietly. "I really am." But for the first time in her life, she didn't know how. By the time she left the hospital, the sky had already turned gray. Not quite evening, not quite day, just stuck in between, like her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another notification. Another reminder of everything she couldn't fix. She didn't need to look. She already knew. Loan request. Denied. Emergency grant. Denied. Shift extension. Unavailable. Denied. 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 The word followed her like a shadow. She sat on the cold concrete steps outside the hospital, staring at nothing. 48 hours. Her mind tried to calculate, tried to solve. I'd tried to find something, anything that made sense. But there was no equation for this, no solution, just a countdown. "Miss Brooks?" Samantha blinked, startled. She hadn't even noticed someone approaching. A woman stood a few feet away, mid-40s maybe, sharp suit, controlled posture. The kind of presence that didn't belong in places like this unless it had a purpose. "Yes?" Samantha asked cautiously. The woman offered a polite smile. "My name is Claire Donovan. I work with the Whitmore Foundation." Samantha frowned slightly. "I don't think We review emergency financial cases connected to the hospital," Claire continued smoothly. "Your name came across my desk this morning." Something in Samantha's chest stirred. Not hope, not yet, but attention. "You're offering assistance?" she asked carefully. Claire tilted her head slightly. In a manner of speaking." That answer didn't feel right. Samantha's grip tightened on her bag. "What does that mean?" Claire studied her for a moment, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "Mr. Whitmore would like to meet you," she said. Samantha blinked. "Who?" "Ethan Whitmore." The name landed. Heavy, familiar, even if she couldn't immediately place why. Then it clicked. Whitmore, the billionaire, tech, investments, healthcare funding, a man people talked about like he wasn't entirely real. "What would someone like him want with me?" Samantha asked slowly. Claire's smile didn't change. "He believes you may be a suitable candidate for a private arrangement." The words felt off, too vague, too careful. "I'm not interested in anything illegal," Samantha said immediately, standing up. Claire didn't flinch. "It's entirely legal." "Then why does it sound like it isn't?" A pause, then, "Because it's unconventional," Claire admitted. Samantha hesitated. Her instincts told her to walk away, to ignore this, to protect what little control she had left. But then, 48 hours. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, fragile, fading. She swallowed hard. "What kind of arrangement?" she asked quietly. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a small card, an address, a time. "Tomorrow morning," she said, handing it over. "If you're interested." Samantha stared at it. The paper felt heavier than it should. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured. "No," Claire agreed softly. "It doesn't." Then she turned and walked away. Just like that, leaving Samantha alone again. But this time, with something else. A choice. Samantha didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, the card resting on the table beside her like it was watching her. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. But neither did the alternative. 48 hours. She checked the time. 36 now. Her chest tightened. Slowly, she sat up, reached for the card, and made her decision. The building didn't look like something meant for meetings. It looked like something meant for control. Glass, steel, silence. Everything about it felt deliberate. Samantha hesitated at the entrance. For a moment, she almost turned around. But then, her phone buzzed again. Another reminder, another denial, and that was enough. She walked inside. The room they led her to was too large, too quiet, too precise. And at the center of it, he stood, Ethan Whitmore. And he didn't look like what she expected. He looked sharper, more controlled, like every part of him had been carefully designed to reveal nothing. Tall, dark hair, cold, observant eyes that didn't miss anything. He didn't greet her, didn't smile, just watched, as if he had already made a decision about her and was waiting to see if she would confirm it. Samantha felt suddenly exposed. "You're Samantha Brooks," he said. Not a question. She nodded. "Yes." A pause. Then, "You're in debt. Your mother is critically ill. You've exhausted all financial options." Her stomach dropped. "You looked into my records?" "I don't make offers without information." "Offers. Right." "That woman said you wanted to see me," Samantha said, forcing her voice steady. "So, what is this?" Ethan studied her for a moment longer. And then, "I'm going to make you an offer," he said. Simple, direct, dangerous. Samantha's pulse quickened. "Okay. I will pay for your mother's treatment," he continued. "All of it." Her breath caught. "I will clear your debts, ensure your education continues without interruption, and provide you with financial security beyond that." The room felt like it tilted. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. "And in return?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't hesitate. "You will agree to carry my child?" The words landed like a physical force. Samantha stared at him, waiting for something. A smile, a correction, a sign that this was some kind of test. But nothing came. "You're serious," she said. "Yes." Her chest tightened. "You want me to—" "What?" "Be a surrogate?" "A controlled surrogacy under contract." Her mind raced. No emotional involvement," he added. "No personal relationship, no expectations beyond the agreement." It sounded clean, clinical, simple, but it didn't feel that way. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you fit the criteria." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that matters." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Samantha took a step back. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yes," he said calmly. "And you think I'm just going to agree to this?" "I think you understand your situation." The words weren't cruel, but they were precise, and they hit exactly where they needed to. 48 hours. 24 now. Her mother. Her future. Everything she was about to lose. Her hands shook slightly. "This would be just a contract?" she asked. "Yes." "No expectations beyond that?" "No." She searched his face, looking for something human, something uncertain. But there was nothing. Just control. Just certainty. And something else. Something she couldn't quite name. Fear? No, not fear. Something deeper. Something buried. And suddenly, she realized, this wasn't just about having a child. There was something else driving him. Something he wasn't saying. Her instincts screamed at her to walk away, to run. But her reality pulled harder, stronger, crueler. Samantha closed her eyes briefly, took a breath, then opened them again. "When do you need an answer?" she asked. Ethan's gaze didn't shift. "Now." Of course. Of course it was now. Because men like him didn't wait, didn't hesitate, didn't lose. Samantha's heart pounded. This was it. The moment everything changed, the moment she chose who she would become and what she would give up. And her voice came out quieter than she expected, but steady. "Okay." A pause. Then, "I'll do it." For the first time, something flickered in Ethan Whitmore's eyes. Not triumph, not relief. Something darker. Something almost like regret. And that was the moment Samantha realized She hadn't just made a deal. She had stepped into something she didn't understand, something that was already in motion, something that wouldn't let her go. Ethan took a slow step closer and said quietly, "You don't understand what you just agreed to." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled, slowly, deeply, like something irreversible had just been carved into the quiet space between them. Samantha Brooks held Ethan Whitmore's gaze for one long second, then another, searching for something she couldn't quite name. A hint, a crack, and a sign that this was still something she could step back from. But his expression didn't change, not even slightly. Cold, measured, certain, and somehow that made it worse. "Then explain it," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. A pause. Ethan's eyes flickered, just once, like something inside him had shifted. But when he spoke, his tone was the same. "You'll be briefed on everything," he said. "Claire will handle the logistics." "That's not what I meant." He tilted his head slightly. "I know." Silence stretched. Samantha's chest tightened. "Why me?" she asked again, softer this time. "Out of everyone you could have chosen, why me?" Ethan didn't answer. Not immediately. Instead, he turned away, walking toward the massive glass window that overlooked the city. His reflection stared back at him, sharp, controlled, untouchable. "Ah, because you said yes," he said finally. Samantha frowned. "That's not... It's enough." The conversation was over. She felt it, like a door quietly shutting, and she was already on the other side. The paperwork took 3 hours. 3 hours of legal language so precise it felt suffocating. Clauses, conditions, boundaries, everything spelled out in cold, clinical detail. Samantha sat at the long glass table, flipping through pages she barely understood, her mind lagging behind her reality. This was happening. Actually happening. Claire Donovan sat across from her, composed as ever. "If you have questions, now is the time," she said gently. Samantha let out a hollow breath. "I have 1,000 questions." Claire nodded. "Ask one." Samantha stared down at the document. "No emotional involvement," she read quietly. "No attempt to establish a personal relationship beyond what is required for medical compliance." Her fingers tightened slightly on the page. "What does that even mean?" she asked. "It means exactly what it says." "That I'm not allowed to feel anything?" Claire's gaze softened just a fraction. "It means this arrangement is not designed for emotional entanglement." Samantha laughed under her breath. "Right. Because that's something people can just control." Claire didn't respond, because they both knew. That wasn't how it worked. Samantha flipped another page. "Full relocation required," she read. "Communication restrictions." Her stomach dropped. "What do you mean, communication restrictions?" Claire's voice remained calm. "For the duration of the agreement, your environment will be controlled to ensure optimal conditions." "Controlled how?" "Limited external contact, supervised communication where necessary." Samantha looked up sharply. "You're isolating me." "No," Claire said evenly. "We're protecting the integrity of the agreement." That sounds like the same thing. Another pause, this one heavier. "Mr. Whitmore values discretion," Claire added. Samantha leaned back slightly, her heart starting to pound again. This is starting to sound less like a contract and more like a cage. Claire didn't flinch. "You're free to decline." The words landed quietly, but they carried weight, because Samantha knew she wasn't free. Not really. Not anymore. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, Pale, still, fading. 48 hours. No, less now. She swallowed hard. "Does he always do this?" she asked suddenly. Claire's brow lifted slightly. Do what? Make people disappear into his world? Claire considered the question for a moment. Then, "He doesn't usually make offers like this," she said. That didn't make Samantha feel better. It made it worse. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Samantha held it between her fingers, staring at the line where her name was supposed to go. This was it. Once she signed, there was no undoing it, no taking it back, no pretending it hadn't happened. Her life would split into two parts, before this moment and everything after. "Take your time," Claire said softly. But Samantha knew time wasn't something she had. Not anymore. She thought about her mother again, about the promise she had made. "I'm not going to lose you," she had whispered just hours ago. And her grip tightened. Slowly, she lowered the pen and signed. The hospital room felt different that night. Brighter, faster, like something had shifted. Doctors moved with urgency. Nurses spoke in quicker tones. Machines were adjusted. New equipment rolled in. Samantha stood at the doorway, watching it all unfold. And for the first time in days, hope didn't feel like a lie. "She's being prepped for advanced treatment," one of the nurses told her with a small smile. Samantha nodded, her throat too tight to respond. This was real. It worked. The deal, it worked. She stepped closer to the bed, taking her mother's hand again. "They're going to help you," she whispered. "I told you I'd figure it out." Her voice broke slightly. "But you have to stay with me, okay?" No response, just the steady rhythm of the machines. But this time, it didn't feel like waiting. It felt like fighting. The car arrived just after midnight. Black, silent, waiting. Samantha stood outside the hospital, her small bag slung over her shoulder. Everything she owned, reduced to this. She hesitated, just for a moment. Then the door opened, and she stepped inside. The estate was nothing like she expected. It wasn't just large, it was controlled. Every detail felt intentional. The lighting, the silence, the way the air itself seemed to settle differently here. Samantha stepped out of the car slowly, her eyes scanning the massive structure in front of her. This wasn't a home. It was something else, something colder. "Welcome," Claire said, appearing beside her. Samantha exhaled quietly. "Do people actually live here?" she asked. Claire's lips curved faintly. "Mr. Whitmore does." That wasn't an answer. Not really. Her room was perfect. Too perfect. Soft lighting, minimalist design, everything clean, organized, untouched, like it had been prepared in advance. Waiting. Samantha set her bag down slowly. "This is yours," Claire said. "For now." Samantha glanced at her. "For now?" Claire nodded. "You'll be moved to a different suite once the medical process begins." The way she said it, clinical, detached, made Samantha's stomach twist. "Medical process," she repeated. "Yes." Samantha walked toward the window, looking out into the dark landscape beyond. It felt far. Everything felt far. Her old life, her apartment, her reality. "You'll have a schedule," Claire continued. "Nutrition, rest, evaluations, everything will be monitored." "Of course it will," Samantha murmured. Claire stepped toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be structured." And then she was gone, leaving Samantha alone. The first night, she didn't sleep. Not really. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the walls themselves were watching, waiting, judging. At some point, she sat up, her chest tight, her thoughts louder than the silence. She needed air. She stepped out into the hallway quietly. The house was dark, still, but not empty. She could feel it, the presence of something or someone. She walked slowly, her bare feet silent against the polished floor. Then, she saw it. A door, slightly ajar, a faint light spilling through. Something about it pulled her in. She stepped closer, carefully, slowly, and pushed it open. The room was different, warmer, less controlled, less perfect. Books lined the walls, old ones, worn. A desk sat near the window, scattered with papers, and on the far wall, a photograph. Samantha's breath caught. She stepped closer, drawn. The woman in the picture was smiling, softly, peacefully. Her dark hair fell loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes, kind, familiar, too familiar. Samantha's heart began to race, because the longer she looked, the more it felt like she was staring at something impossible. The woman looked like her, not exactly, but close enough to make her stomach twist. "What are you doing in here?" The voice cut through the room, cold, sharp. Samantha spun around. Ethan stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, but his eyes dark, dangerous. I was just," she stammered. "You weren't supposed to be here." The way he said it, low, controlled, but underneath it, something else, something closer to panic. Samantha glanced back at the photograph, then at him. "Who is she?" she asked quietly. Silence. Ethan didn't answer, didn't move, just watched her, and for the first time, he didn't look in control. "Why does she look like me?" Samantha pressed. His jaw tightened. "You need to leave," he said. "That's not an answer. It's not a discussion." Samantha's chest rose and fell rapidly. "This isn't just about a contract, is it?" she said. "You didn't choose me randomly." Still, no answer. But his silence spoke louder than anything he could say. Something cold settled in her chest. "You knew," she whispered. Ethan's gaze flickered, just slightly. "You knew exactly who I was when you made that offer." Another silence. And this time, it confirmed everything. Miss Samantha took a slow step back, her heart pounding. "What did I just walk into?" she asked. Ethan didn't respond, not with words, but the look in his eyes. That was enough, because whatever this was, it was bigger than she thought, darker than she imagined, and somehow, she was already too deep inside it. "Get some rest," he said finally. His voice was calm again, controlled, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just uncovered something she couldn't unsee. Samantha didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared at him, and in that moment, she realized something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't just a deal. It wasn't just a contract. It wasn't even just about the child. This was something else, something unfinished, something unresolved, something that had been waiting for her. And as she walked out of that room, one thought echoed louder than all the rest. She hadn't just agreed to carry his child. She had stepped into someone else's story, and she had no idea how it ended. Sleep never came. Not really. Samantha lay still in the unfamiliar bed, her eyes open in the darkness, replaying the image over and over again. The photograph, that woman, that face, her face, not identical, but close enough to feel like a reflection distorted by memory. And Ethan's reaction. That hadn't been anger. It had been something worse. Fear. Morning arrived without warning. Soft light slipped through the curtains, gentle and calm, as if the night hadn't happened at all. But Samantha felt it. In her chest. In the way her body stayed tense even as she sat up. A quiet knock came at the door. "Miss Brooks," Claire's voice followed. It's time." Of course it was. Samantha stood slowly, her movements heavy, like she was walking into something she couldn't avoid. When she opened the door, Claire stood there with the same composed expression. Nothing out of place, nothing acknowledging what Samantha had seen. "Breakfast will be served downstairs," Claire said. "Then your first evaluation." Evaluation. Samantha nodded. "Right." The dining room was large, but the table felt too small for the silence sitting between them. Ethan was already there, seated, composed, untouched by the tension Samantha carried into the room. He didn't look up immediately, didn't greet her, just continued reading something on the tablet in front of him, as if last night had never happened, as if she hadn't seen what she wasn't supposed to see. Samantha sat across from him slowly, watched him. Awaited. Nothing. Not a word. Not a glance. Finally. "Who is she?" Samantha asked. The question cut through the silence. Ethan's hand paused, just slightly, then resumed. "You're here to fulfill an agreement," he said calmly. "Not to investigate my past." Samantha leaned forward. "That's not how this works anymore." His eyes lifted then, sharp, cold. "Explain." "I saw her," Samantha said, her voice tightening. "And you don't get to pretend that didn't happen." A beat, then, "She's not relevant to you." "That's a lie." Silence, the kind that presses, forces, breaks. Samantha held his gaze, refusing to back down this time. "Does this have something to do with why you chose me?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer, but something in his expression, something subtle, confirmed everything she needed to know. Samantha's breath caught. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You didn't just pick me because I fit your criteria." Still, no denial. "You picked me because I look like her." The words landed hard, heavy, final. Ethan exhaled slowly, setting the tablet aside. "For the purpose of this agreement, that detail is irrelevant." Samantha let out a bitter laugh. "Irrelevant?" she repeated. "You brought me into your home, into your life, into your child's future, because I remind you of someone else, and that's irrelevant." His jaw tightened. "You're making assumptions." "Then correct them." Silence. And in that silence, he chose not to. That was her answer. The evaluation room was colder than the rest of the house. Clinical, bright, unforgiving. Samantha sat on the edge of the examination bed, her fingers curled tightly in her lap as doctors moved around her, and preparing equipment, speaking in quiet, efficient tones. Everything felt detached, like she wasn't a person in this moment, just a process, a requirement. "Vitals are stable," one of the doctors said. "Begin preliminary screening." Samantha stared ahead, her mind still tangled in the conversation from minutes ago, in the truth that had just unfolded without being fully spoken. "You look like her." The words echoed, louder, sharper, and suddenly, this didn't feel like a choice anymore. It felt like something she had been pulled into long before she said yes. "Miss Brooks?" She blinked, looked up. "Yes?" "We'll begin shortly." She nodded, but her chest tightened, because something inside her was shifting, changing, breaking. Later that afternoon, she found him again, not in the dining room, not in the study, but outside, standing alone near the edge of the property, where the manicured grounds gave way to something wilder, uncontrolled. Samantha approached slowly. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her, but he knew she was there. "You should have told me," she said quietly. The wind carried her voice just enough. "I didn't think it was necessary." She stopped a few feet behind him. It was. A pause. Then, "She died here," he said. The words were quiet, almost lost in the air, but Samantha heard them, felt them. Her breath caught. "What?" she whispered. Ethan's shoulders tensed slightly. 3 years ago," he continued. "Complications." Samantha's heart began to race. "She was pregnant," he added. The world tilted, just slightly, and suddenly, everything started to connect. The contract, the control, the isolation. "You lost her," Samantha said softly. "Yes." "And the baby?" Silence. Long. Heavy. Then, "Yes." The word barely existed when it left him, and for the first time, she saw it. Not the control, not the power, but the fracture beneath it. The part of him that hadn't healed, that hadn't moved on. "That's why you're doing this," she realized. "You're trying to fix it." "No," he said immediately, but it didn't sound convincing. "You're trying to rewrite it," she pressed. "You think if you do everything right this time, if you control every detail, you won't lose them again." His jaw tightened. "I'm ensuring a successful outcome." "You're trying to replace her." The words hit harder than she expected, because they were true, and he knew it. "That's not what this is," he said, his voice lower now. "Then what is it?" Silence. Again. But this time, it wasn't defensive. It was uncertain, and that scared her more. Days passed, then weeks, and something began to change, not all at once, not in ways that made sense, but slowly, quietly. The lines started to blur. Ethan was still distant, still controlled, but not always. There were moments, small ones, unintended ones, where something softer slipped through. The way he lingered just a second too long when checking on her. The way his voice lost its edge when he spoke her name. The way his eyes stayed on her. Not like he was looking at someone else, but like he was starting to see her. And that was the most dangerous part. Because Samantha felt it too. That shift, that pull. Something she wasn't supposed to feel. Something the contract had forbidden. But emotions didn't care about contracts. They didn't follow rules. They just happened. In the night, everything changed. It was quiet. Too quiet. Samantha stood in the hallway, her hand resting lightly against her stomach. Something felt off. Not pain, not exactly, but wrong. A sudden wave of dizziness hit her. Sharp, unexpected. She stumbled slightly, gripping the wall. Her breath quickened. "Hello?" she called out, her voice unsteady. No answer. The house felt empty, too empty. Another wave hit. Stronger. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. And suddenly, she couldn't breathe. By the time Ethan found her, she was on the floor, barely conscious. "Samantha." Her name sounded distant, fading. Hands were on her, lifting her, holding her steady. "Stay with me," he said, his voice no longer calm, no longer controlled. It was something else now, urgent, desperate. "Get the doctor," he snapped to someone behind him. Samantha tried to focus, tried to speak, but everything felt far. "Ethan," she whispered. His grip tightened. "I'm here." And for the first time, he sounded afraid. The room spun, voices blurred, lights too bright, too sharp, and then darkness. When she woke up, the first thing she felt was silence. The second was his presence. Ethan sat beside the bed, still, unmoving, watching. "You're awake," he said quietly. Samantha blinked slowly. What happened? A pause. Then, "You're pregnant." The words settled, heavy, real, final. Her breath caught. Pregnant. It worked. The contract, the arrangement, everything. It was real now. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, he was still there, still watching her. But this time, there was something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Something unguarded, something raw. Not control, not calculation, something closer to fear, and something even more dangerous, hope. Samantha swallowed hard, because in that moment, she realized the truth. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This wasn't just about the contract. This wasn't just about the child. It was about what was happening now, between them. And whatever it was no longer something either of them could control. And that was the most terrifying part of all.